Welcome to the Step Pyramid Complex of Djoser. The Step Pyramid is at the center of an enclosed complex comprised of temples. The Step Pyramid is the first monument built of stone. Standing at 60 meters high, it was the tallest of its time. Built 47. The Step Pyramid Complex is enclosed within a 1,600-meter-long wall that is 10 meters high. This large wall was made out of wood. While there are 14 doors, only its eastern door was intended to accommodate the living. The remaining false doors were built as portals. The only real entrance into the complex is at the end of a long, narrow passageway. This enclosure has a stone canopy. The corridor is lined with 20 pairs of columns up to 6 meters high, built by stacking stone drums. The completed facade with made to resemble reed stock bundles. Traces of red chambers are located on either side of the columns and are thought to be chapels representing the provinces of Upper and Lower Egypt. According to some Egyptologists, the arrangement of the rooms may be symbolic of jurisdiction and judgment. Guarded by a line of carved snakes, this tomb is located at the southern end of the courtyard. The burial chamber is a polished limestone staircase. The architect Imhotep chose stone as a building material. A staircase allowing the pharaoh to enter the divine world was represented by a tiered pyramid. Pharaoh Djoser the Sacred was the founder of the Third Dynasty. He ruled for 19 years. Djoser was associated with the sky god Horus in his human form. A plinth near the Step Pyramid is inscribed with his name and associated with Horus. The funerary complex was built to resemble Djoser's palace, with the stone carved to imitate mud brick, trees, and reeds. Creating these details and softer. In the corner is a temple referred to as T. This temple is among the most mysterious structures in the complex. Its outer facade. The Hebsed festival enabled the pharaoh to maintain universal order and renew godly powers. Through a series of trials, within the complex of Djoser, southeast of the pyramid, is a dedicated space for this essential ritual to be performed by the king even in the afterlife. The Hebsed courtyard is lined with false chapels and equipped with a platform featuring 2 staircases meant to represent Upper and Lower Egypt. Located in the courtyard, the 2 pavilions are believed to represent the palaces of Upper and Lower Egypt. Rectangular in shape, the 2 replica structures face one another. The funerary temple is on the north side of the complex, facing the stars where the deceased ruler was believed to travel after death. Within this temple was the pharaoh's serdab, or cellar. The north wall has 2 observation holes. A statue of Djoser is seated on the throne, wearing a mantle and a tripartite wig with a crown known as a Nemes. Representing the king's Ka, this statue looks through the observation holes into the courtyard, enabling the king to observe the ceremonies and receive offerings in the afterlife. Welcome to Inside Djoser's Step Pyramid. The architect of the Step Pyramid, Imhotep, was a man of great importance to Pharaoh Djoser and ancient Egyptians in general. The base of a statue of Djoser, discovered in 1926, from the design of the pyramid to the elements within the complex itself, Imhotep set out to create something that would immortalize his king. An architectural achievement, the Step. In addition to the central subterranean palace built for Djoser, 11 wells were dug. Each went to a depth of 33 meters and connected with a horizontal gallery extending for about 20 meters. The first 5 galleries were intended for members of the royal family. 2 passages lead underground and branch off in 3 directions to various magazine galleries. This vast underground space accommodated sections for storage and ceremonial offerings. One of the tunnels, starting on the east side of the pyramid. The burial chamber of Djoser is located at the bottom of a 28-meter deep central shaft. At the foot of the chamber are many tunnels going in all directions. Unlike the Great Pyramid of Giza or Menkaure, the Pyramid of Djoser does not have any extra openings dug out by thieves. The Pharaoh's apartments, also known as the Blue Chambers, are decorated with blue-green tiles meant to... There are 2 long rooms running side by side along a north-south axis. The south room has false doors separated by stone panels, while the north room... The door frames are made of fine limestone and carved with the king's name. As in the south tomb, reliefs are carved into the doorways. These reliefs show the king performing rituals and visiting divine sanctuaries for all eternity. Their interiors are fictive additions made by the team to add to the wonders of the tomb. It is clear from the elaborate detail and scale of the complex that this funerary monument was a technological marvel of its time. Welcome to Sneferu's first pyramid. With the long reign of Sneferu, the first king of the 4th dynasty, the most brilliant and creative. While Sneferu's monument started as a 7-stepped pyramid, it was later... The smooth dressing of the walls did not provide sufficient bonding, however, and the outer... As well as the smooth sides, it was the first time a ceremonial pavement was built, leading from the valley to the temple of the pyramid. Another innovation was that of the funerary chamber, which was no longer at the bottom of a well, but rather above ground level. This change signaled the beginning of the 3-bedroom system. Welcome to the Bent Pyramid of Dashur. After the construction of the Meidum Pyramid failed, Sneferu transferred his residence and the official... Though the pyramid also proved unstable and was abandoned, it marked a technical and architectural breakthrough, heralding an important design transition. The Bent Pyramid was unique in having 2 separate entrances, one on the northern face and another on the western face. The chamber of this pyramid was too small for a human burial. With the bent pyramid, architects successfully experimented with a completely new idea: to build the pyramid with a core of huge stones settled on a progressive horizontal design. This way, each construction phase could be completed in a single stage, allowing the architect complete control over every design element. Unfortunately, these precautions did not prevent sagging or cracks in the interior rooms of the pyramid. Sneferu abandoned the monument and began the construction of yet another pyramid. Welcome to the Red Pyramid of Dashur. The Red Pyramid was built 2 kilometers to the north of the Bent Pyramid. It was so named due to the reddish limestone used in its construction. The Red Pyramid reached a height of 105 meters. While the ground level of the Red Pyramid is lower than that of the Bent Pyramid, its height is vertical. The descending corridor of the pyramid, which opens to the north, arrives at ground level, where 2 almost identical spectacular chambers with high ceilings are aligned north to south and connected by a short horizontal passage. In the south wall of the second chamber, the annexes of the Red Pyramid consist of a small funerary temple located to the east. A causeway presumably ran due east from the temple, but it has yet to be excavated. The Red Pyramid was structurally sound, and once finished, marked a remarkable design milestone. Finally successful in his attempts to build himself a suitable funerary monument, Sneferu knew his future beyond death was assured. Welcome to Pyramids of the Middle Kingdom. During the Middle Kingdom era, the powerful rulers of the 12th dynasty resumed the tradition of elaborate pyramids. The plundering of tombs in troubled times prompted the architects of the Middle Kingdom to devise increasingly complicated means of security during construction. As such, while the architectural plans of the Hawara Pyramid were simpler than the one, the kings of the 13th dynasty began building their pyramids at Masguna, south of Dashur, then moved on to Fayum and Abydos. The kings of the 17th dynasty, however, satisfied themselves with crowning their cave tombs with small pyramids. It was not until the Nubian pharaohs of the 25th dynasty that kings were once again buried under pyramidal tombs. In fact, today, the area of ancient Nubia, modern Sudan, contains a record number of 220 known pyramids to Egypt's 138. Despite their slow decline in use and quality, pyramids continued to fascinate all and sundry up to the Roman era. They remain to this day a symbol of the religious dedication of the pharaohs and the grandeur of ancient Egypt.
Welcome to an overview of the Giza necropolis. The Giza Plateau is located on the west bank of the Nile and was considered by ancient Egyptians as the domain of the dead. The pyramidal complexes found there were built over the span of three. The Giza area, now famous for its 3 pyramids, is part of a wider grouping of funerary complexes. The placement of the Giza monuments, and particularly that of the pyramids, followed a practical yet strict alignment. First, they focused on cardinal points, and then they accounted for the natural geology of the plateau. Welcome to the riddles of... A sphinx was originally meant to be a personification. Over the centuries, enthusiasts and historians alike have wondered. Another theory suggests that the Sphinx was built by Khafre and was meant to represent him. While ancient Egypt as a whole leaves a rather monochrome vision of its monuments and statuary, it is vital to understand that in ancient times, absolutely everything. Red had a strong symbolism in ancient Egypt. It was both the color of life and the... Dating from the 4th dynasty, approximately 2600 to 2500 BCE, the Great Sphinx of Giza. In order to bring polish to the imposing monument, several blocks of limestone were added after the initial construction phase. Since then, there have been numerous attempts at preservation. The polish present in the game integrates some aspects of modern restoration attempts. The team made this choice to present a more iconic... The Sphinx as a whole was carved in situ from a natural stone promontory. Its head was built in a limestone peak of the Mukattam Plate, and the body was... The natural bedrock is seen through the oblique natural strata of the Sphinx's body that are similar to the surrounding limestone. Since antiquity, people have always believed there was a hidden tomb deep within the Sphinx. It is thought that attempts to plunder the Sphinx began as far back as the First Intermediate. 12 meters long and cut during pharaonic times, another entrance in the back of the Sphinx aroused curiosity. While there have been no major discoveries pertaining to the Sphinx of Giza in recent years, theories and hypotheses continue to emerge. Without validation provided by archaeological sources, however, they remain unsubstantial. The first of the main theories as to the Sphinx... Several scientific projects using new technologies have been put in place in the... What the Sphinx of Giza represented during... Amenhotep II, Egyptologist. While sleeping between the Sphinx's paws, the future Thutmose. The 15-ton dream stela built by Thutmose IV to commemorate his dream was discovered by an Italian Egyptologist, Giovanni Battista Caviglia, in 18... That same year, Caviglia discovered fragments of the Sphinx's beard that had probably been added during the New Kingdom. If many of these pieces are held by museums in Cairo, a popular cultural legend purports that the nose of the Sphinx of Giza was lost during the time of... The most plausible hypothesis is based on the research of the German historian Ulrich Harman. During the 1980s, Harman compiled medieval sources written by Arab authors. In doing so, he discovered that the Sphinx was once perceived as a favorable omen, a deity supporting sediment-nurturing floods and crops. Around 1378, a Sufi by the name of Muhammad Sa'im al-Dar could not stand this vision of the monument, and in an iconoclastic act, broke the nose of the Sphinx. According to the texts, he was then hanged and burned between the legs of the Sphinx for his crime.
Welcome to Khufu's funerary complex. The Valley Temple was the first architectural component encountered when one entered the funerary complex. It was considered the official entrance of the tomb and mixed the structural components of both a temple and a portico. Khufu's Valley Temple. Khufu's causeway ran from the floodplain up to the plateau, linking together the Valley Temple and the Mortuary Temple. A traditional causeway presented itself as a path, enclosed by walls and often roofed. Fragments discovered by archaeologists indicate that the walls in Khufu's causeway, one of the longest known to us, were decorated with carvings and possibly. The most impressive private cemeteries of Giza are located east and west of Khufu's pyramid. The Eastern Cemetery was reserved for members of the royal family, while the Western Cemetery was mostly set aside for various court dignitaries. To the east of Khufu's pyramid reside three smaller constructions, the three Queen's Pyramids. A sloping passage led from. The northernmost pyramid was most likely meant for Queen Hetepheres, who is believed to have been Khufu's mother. However, in 1925, her actual tomb was discovered nearby by accident. It was hidden at the bottom of a deep masonry pit in an underground chamber. Within the concealed chamber, Within the vicinity of Khufu's pyramid, Egyptologists have uncovered 7 boat pits. The two southern boat pits, each covered by a roof of huge limestone slabs, were discovered in 1954 by Kamal al-Malak, an Egyptian Egyptologist. Only one of them had been opened, 1,224. The Greek term pyramidion refers to the capital. A few pyramidia have been retrieved from pyramidal complexes. The earliest, found in Dashur, is undoubtedly a good example of Old Kingdom's pyramidia. It is made of limestone and has no inscriptions. The pyramidia of the were recovered. The reconstitution you see in the game is fictive, incorporating a golden pyramidion bearing inscriptions relevant to Khufu.
Welcome to Secrets of the Great Pyramid. Built around 2550 BCE, the Great Pyramid of Giza is considered one of the most iconic structures of Egypt. It is the biggest of the pyramids and the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing. The numbers associated to the Great Pyramid of Giza are impressive. A workforce of over 20,000 people, 6 million tons of stone. The construction of the Great Pyramid was also a display of power and opulence on the part of Khufu. It is part of the pharaoh's vast funerary complex, which also includes 2 temples, 3 satellite. New insights into engineering and ancient Egyptian culture are still being revealed over 4,500 years later. For example, it is interesting to note that by Cleopatra's time, the pyramid's celestial purpose, its construction, and the function of its mysterious inner chambers was already unclear. The Egyptians had polished their design for centuries by the time work on the Great Pyramid began. Intended as a tomb for Khufu, the Great Pyramid, precisely oriented north-south to the 4 cardinal points of a compass, the length of each side of the Great Pyramid at its base was 2. In order to achieve the shape of a true pyramid, the design required many considerations in the planning phases, as well as materials for the Great Pyramid consisted of quarried limestone blocks, weighing between 2 to 15 tons each. The methods of moving these blocks into place is still debated by It's estimated that it took between 600,000 and 2 million blocks of stone to build the Great Pyramid. Experts calculate it would have required men to move. While the interior chambers were built with red granite from Aswan, most of the pyramid was made from local limestone, weighing between 2 to 15 tons per block. There is debate on how. The recently discovered logbook confirms that the high-quality limestone of the outer casing was brought by boat across the Nile. Over the centuries, thieves and travelers attempted to access the Great Pyramid numerous times. Ancient writings describe details of its interior. The main entrance of the Great Pyramid is located 17 meters above ground level. It faces north, likely in order to align with the North Star. Though the entrance passageway had been discovered in antiquity, any further access into the Great Pyramid was stopped by massive vertical slabs of rock. The Robbers' Entrance is reported to have been opened in the 9th century by Caliph al-Mamun. In search of treasure, the Caliph had his men dig their way inside the Great Pyramid. The most likely scenario is that attempts to gain entry to the Great Pyramid and uncover its potential secrets continued throughout the centuries. In the 19th century, the belief that another entry existed at the south side resulted in a hole being blasted into the pyramid's side, with no results for the damage that was done. While the search is still ongoing today to uncover more hidden rooms and passageways, conservation is the primary concern of all such efforts. Welcome to the Great Pyramid. From the original entrance of the Great Pyramid, there is a passage leading to the subterranean chamber. Its walls were carved out of the existing rock of the plateau and then covered. While the original passage was 145 meters long, the team reduced its length and made it both wider. The well shaft was a 58-meter vertical passage that connected the descending corridor to the grand gallery above. There is much speculation over the purpose of the well shaft. One theory is that the channel was cut or enlarged to supply air to workers in the descending passage. Another is that it was meant to provide an exit route once the work was done in the heart of the pyramid. Without the well shaft, workers would have been trapped inside forever when the Grand Gallery was sealed. The opening at the bottom of the well shaft was most likely sealed by exiting workers to camouflage the passageway. There is a subterranean chamber at the end of the descending corridor, 30 meters below the Giza Plateau's surface. The chamber also contains an 11-meter pit near the east side. It's unclear what this may have been used for. In the game, this well leads to a fictive The subterranean chamber's original purpose remains a mystery. One popular theory is that it was originally meant to be Khufu's burial chamber, but the pharaoh changed his mind, preferring to be buried higher up in the pyramid, which would explain the chamber's unfinished state.
Welcome to the Great Pyramid of Giza, Upper Chambers. At the entrance of the ascending passage are 3 granite flagstones estimated to weigh up to 25 tons each. They were used to protect the Great Pyramid from thieves. While in reality the robber's entrance is one single cavity which leads to both passages. In the game, the team created individual access. The ascending passageway of the Great Pyramid provides a direct path into the Grand Gallery and is accessed 30 meters from the entrance along the descending corridor. The ascending corridor has smooth masonry on its walls, and the layout includes many trapezoidal stones. Both the floor and ceiling of the passageway indicate that the Grand Gallery's purpose is still debated among experts. It may have been intended to align with the stars, act as a buffer to protect the King's Chamber, or simply to facilitate the transport of the granite blocks used inside the pyramid. Access to the Queen's Chamber was at the beginning of the Grand Gallery. Though this room is referred to as the Queen's Chamber, it is believed that there was no queen buried here. Based on their knowledge of earlier pyramids, situated exactly within the pyramid's center, on the east-west axis of the pyramid, the chamber has a vaulted ceiling and measures 5.7 by 5. In the 19th century, 2 shafts were found running through the north and south walls. They each run in a horizontal line for. A recent scan of the room indicated the presence of an unknown cavity hidden behind the north face of the walls over the descending corridor. Further investigation is still ongoing to ascertain the nature of the anomaly, so as to avoid risking damage to the monument. Khufu's architects were possibly influenced by earlier rhomboidal pyramids when designing the gallery. While the space is visually dramatic, the gallery seemed to serve a practical function, though at the end of the Grand Gallery is the entrance to the antechamber leading to the King's Chamber. The far end of the Grand Gallery leads to a small antechamber with a portcullis, preventing access. For the purposes of the game, the team elected to remove the portcullis slabs in order to grant the player access to the King's Chamber. In reality, workers would have backed out of the room after the funeral, lowering each slab into place behind them one at a time. Each of the three stones were smashed by looters centuries later, and evidence of their break-in is still evident. The King's Chamber is built entirely out of red granite. As in the Queen's Chamber, two shafts extend out from the room towards the north and south faces of. There is a granite sarcophagus at the west end of the room, but it is the concealed construction inscriptions. Khufu's mummy was never found. It is hoped that as of yet undiscovered hidden rooms and shafts of the pyramid may provide an answer as to its location. Welcome to Jean-Pierre Houdin's Theories. The team wanted to provide players with a sense of exploration and discovery, particularly within the Great Pyramid. As such, a decision was made that the internal design of the monument in the game would reflect Jean-Pierre Houdin's theories. While the antechambers of the King's Tomb have yet to be discovered, Houdin posits that this... While respecting Houdin's hypothesis as to the general layout of the antechambers, the team wanted the contents to enhance the game experience. In regular royal tombs, the antechambers were filled with all the material goods needed by the pharaoh in the afterlife. To support the feelings of discovery and awe, the art team created a unique and fantastical treasure in this second antechamber. Houdin theorized that the ascending corridor and the Great Gallery were used by the workers to haul hoist the heavy beams above the King's Chamber. He called it the service circuit. With this structure in mind, one can easily assume that the pyramid's entrance would have been connected to the two antechambers. Modern research has revealed that a cavity might be located behind the north face chevrons of the pyramid. As such, the team chose to create this area for the player to explore. Here is where Houdin believes that the priests and nobles would have exited the pyramid after the burial ceremony. Many theories regarding the construction of the Great Pyramid rely on the usage of external ramps. However, Houdin believes an external ramp would have been too steep for the upper portion of the pyramid. Houdin's theory states that this internal ramp followed the sides of the pyramid in an ascending spiral pattern. A notch discovered in the edge of the Great Pyramid, known as Bob's Room, seems to support this theory. Located at the corners of each edge of the pyramid, these large rooms would have allowed work. This long corridor was the first section of the ascending internal ramp. Through it, the blocks used to build the Great Pyramid would have been carefully moved upward and then turned at each edge of the pyramid in order to continue their ascent. Though the team only created the main ramp for the game, Houdin posits that this ramp had 2 levels, allowing workers to return safely to the bottom thanks to an additional corbelled upper section. According to Houdin, the start of the inner ramp was located at the base of the southeastern This location would have been the junction point of the external and internal ramps. Below us, workers would have built the lower part of the pyramid with the external ramp before eventually switching to the internal ramp for the middle and upper sections of the pyramid. At that time in the process, they could have reused the material of the external ramp to fill the center of the pyramid, hauling the stones in through the internal ramp. Welcome to Khafre's funerary complex. Since the very beginning of the 4th dynasty, mortuary temples were built adjacent to pyramids on the eastern side. Such a location, facing the rising sun, as well as the world of the living. In its standard form, a mortuary temple was divided into 2 parts. A front area which consisted of a vestibule and a courtyard, and an area in the back, where the largest of all such structures, Khafre's mortuary temple was entirely built with megalithic blocks of limestone from a nearby quarry and encased with granite. Parts of Khafre's mortuary temple, particularly the courtyard walls, are thought to have been decorated with splendid reliefs. Khufu's direct successor, Djedefre, followed the custom which required each king to establish a new site for their funerary accommodation, and chose Abu Rawash as his last resting place. When the time came to build his own funerary complex, Khafre, also one of Khufu's sons and the successor to Djedefre, broke with tradition and returned to Giza. Not only did Khafre thumb his nose at tradition, but he did so in a way which he hoped would allow him to overshadow his father's most important. Though Khafre's pyramid is smaller than Khufu's, it was cunningly built on a more elevated bedrock layer than the Great Pyramid, making it appear higher than any other pyramid at Giza. Today, Khafre's pyramid is the only one among the 3 at Giza that still has the upper part of its limestone casing. Considered a most sacred area, the Giza necropolis was strictly defined, both geographically and physically. An 8-meter-thick Tura limestone wall. From the reign of Sneferu and onwards, the subsidiary pyramid became a common feature within the pyramidal complex. The function of the subsidiary pyramid, however, in mainstream media, the Ka is often defined as the soul of the deceased. The truth is a bit more complicated. Within Khafre's subsidiary pyramid, a wooden box containing pieces of cedar was discovered by archaeologists. When reassembled, it turned out to be a shrine mounted on a sled. Just as with the solar barges found around Khufu's pyramid, it seems Khafre's shrine and sled were ritually disposed of after his funeral.
Welcome to Menkaura's funerary complex. The dimensions of Menkaura's pyramid are much less grandiose. However, unlike its predecessors, Menkaura's pyramid shows a great deal of complexity in its internal and external finish. The outside was partially covered in red granite. Menkaura's pyramid contains two sloping passages, both located in the northern side of the structure. The upper one was abandoned during the construction phase, whereas the lower one, slightly above the base of the monument, constitutes the real entrance. While Menkaura's pyramid complex was unfinished at the time of his death, it was hastily and somewhat shabbily completed by his successor, Shepseskaf. Even so, this funerary structure marks a watershed in the history of this kind of monument. From then onwards, the pyramid shrank, whereas the mortuary temple expanded. Menkaura's causeway was completed in mud brick by the king's successor, whereas the lower part was nothing more than a simple ramp. As for the Valley Temple, it was built in two phases. The foundations were first laid out in limestone during Menkaura's reign, but the temple itself was... Three small structures, referred to as Menkaura's Queen's Pyramids, were erected along the southern side of the main pyramid. One of them was a smooth-faced pyramid, while the other two were more basic step pyramids. It is difficult to assess whether the latter were designed. The easternmost pyramid was built with the traditional rooms and corridors found within a satellite pyramid meant to house the king's ka. However, a granite sarcophagus was found within, leading to the conclusion that it was used as an actual tomb rather than as a symbolic cenotaph. Drawing on these observations, some assume that this pyramid was first built as a satellite pyramid for the king's ka, before seeing its purpose change to that of a queen's tomb. Which queen, however, remains a mystery.
Welcome to Roman military equipment. The strength of Rome was directly dependent on its military supremacy and fundamentally militaristic society. The quality of the armor of a Roman foot soldier was intrinsically linked to his social status and wealth. Chainmail was the most commonly used type of armor. Scale armor, made famous in today's media, came into use after Caesar's time. Roman soldiers used the same types of weapons. The stomach and face were the most targeted parts of the body. As such, a legionary was equipped with two close combat weapons, a dagger and a short sword, known as a gladius. One of the most ingenious Roman weapons was the javelin. Its pyramid-shaped tip pierced the body, while its iron shank... During their conquests, the Romans regularly transformed enemy technologies to add to their own formidable arsenal. After capturing a Carthaginian vessel, the Romans adopted its better features and constructed a superior fleet of ships. Adapting heavy artillery designs from Greek models aided the Romans in building catapults and ballistae. The latter became an iconic symbol of Roman warfare. Welcome to Roman forts. The size of a Roman military camp, known as a castrum, varied significantly depending on how many soldiers it needed to accommodate. However, they all rectangular in shape, the forts were heavily fortified by ramparts and a ditch system. The walls were reinforced with parapets, essentially an extension at the roofline which allowed access doors on all four sides were each flanked by guard towers. The commanding officer was positioned in the middle of the camp, giving him a clear view of the troops and the main gate. Along with sleeping barracks for the soldiers, the fort also had a granary that was expected to hold rations for a year or longer. To ensure the health of the soldiers, every camp was equipped with medical staff and a hospital. A clean water supply with conduits for a bathhouse and latrines was included in the construction of every fort.
Welcome to the forts of Cyrenaica. Cyrenaica was a Libyan region under Roman control, gifted to Rome by one of Cleopatra's ancestors. The remains and stone was the most commonly used material to build forts in Egypt and Cyrenaica. Though no real proof of a fortress similar to the one before you has been uncovered in that region, the team chose to add it as a worthy and awe-inspiring end-of-game challenge for the player. The forts of Cyrenaica were intended to prevent invaders from gaining access to the main route that led to the country's 5 most important cities. These forts were built close to coastal plains and deserts for added defense. Other than reference to an attack around 404 CE and a military reorganization by Emperor Justinian during the 6th century CE, we still know little of the Roman military presence in Cyrenaica. Welcome to Roman aqueducts. Water management was taken seriously by the Romans. Cyrenaica benefited greatly from Roman administration, with the construction of aqueducts and canals. The source of water varied depending on the location. Many aqueducts were built at the foot of the mountains, offering greater flow from the melting snow. The ability to transport water over a greater distance increased agricultural production. Some aqueducts were reported to be over 7 kilometers in length. Where the Greeks of Libya originally focused mainly on olive trees and figs, which required less water, the advent of Roman aqueducts allowed for a far greater crop diversity. Every farm's water use was carefully scheduled. The engineering methods used to create aqueducts were constantly reviewed, with a clear focus on exploiting the local environment. Materials, water usage, cleaning regulations, and a deep understanding of how to exploit gravity itself were all important concerns. Several fortresses were built to protect the aqueducts, basins, and cisterns. Additional water was collected with wells and cisterns, but aqueducts were the main supply of fresh water. The water was distributed based on the collective needs of the city, before the private needs of an individual. Almost all aqueducts ended in a fountain where the water circulated to clean the streets and supply bathhouses and latrines, thus improving the cleanliness of Cyrenaica's cities.
Welcome to Crucifixion. In terms of the severity of Roman justice, crucifixion was at the top of the list of corporal punishment. Easily accessible, crucifixions were popular entertainment among the citizenry. Unlike throwing victims to wild animals, which required an arena, crucifixions did not require any particular setting. Those subjected to crucifixion were almost always slaves, traitors, and lower-class citizens. Roman deserters were crucified because the betrayal of the soldiers was perceived as endangering the lives of Roman citizens. In 71 BCE, a major slave uprising in Italia was repressed by the Roman army. This resulted in the crucifixion of 6,000 men, including their leader, a slave and former gladiator known as Spartacus.